Welcome back to the Peer Perspective Podcast. I'm your host, Calvin Blaircom. Before we get started, if you or someone you know might benefit from today's episode, please make sure to like, subscribe, and share the episode. Your support means the world. In this episode of the Peer Perspective Podcast, I sit down with Penny Austad, the inspiring owner of Krumm Exteriors. Penny shares her powerful journey of recovery, navigating the loss of loved ones, serious health challenges, and job loss, and how those experiences led her to something greater. Today, she not only owns the company that she used to work for, but also uses her platform to give back in a meaningful way. Penny's story is one of resilience, faith, and personal transformation you won't want to miss. Without further ado, here's Penny. I appreciate you meeting with me.
Oh yeah.
This morning. Turned out to be a beautiful day, and I'm really excited to finally meet you and hear, about your experience. We've kind of been going back and forth, and I'm trying to think back. So you started following our Facebook page, right?
Well, I think at one point you and I were friends when it was just when you were a profile Peer Perspective on Facebook.
Okay, yep.
And then you built the page, and I know I'd been following you and whatnot, and then I think I wound up messaging you. I don't think I know. I wound up messaging you. I had somebody reach out through a mutual friend. They were struggling. They went so many places to try and get help.
That's what it was.
And they were trying to stay sober, and they were just in a household that it was not a good household to be in.
Sure.
To try and stay sober.
Yep.
And I had exhausted all of my resources, so I reached out to you, and then you had some more resources that I was able to give her, and so I thought that was pretty cool, and like just the epitome of how recovery works.
Right. Yeah. Networking and connecting with other people. It's that's awesome. And so here we are, almost a year later or something.
Yeah.
And you're here to kind of share your experience. So maybe that's where we should start. If you want to introduce yourself.
So I'm Penny Austad. I am the owner of Krumm Exteriors. Tuesday I just celebrated 14 years of recovery.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's super exciting. Just been around this for a while, and So kind of going into my childhood, I grew up, born and raised in St. Croix Falls.
Okay.
I grew up with an alcoholic father, and so just kind of grew up with that. I have two younger brothers. I've been talking a lot about it too recently. While my mom was taking care of my dad drinking, I was taking care of my brothers, and we were just it was kind of that role. Luckily, our family was fortunate. My dad did quit drinking for a little while when I was younger, and then he was in recovery for 5 years, and then went back out. He stopped going to meetings, stopped working the program, and then wound up going back into it again, and now he's been sober 40 years.
Wow.
So that's pretty amazing. So very fortunate in that fact that through my childhood, my dad was in recovery. Just growing up, we lived in between, out on 5 acres in the country, and it's kind of, mom and dad just worked. They worked, they saved, they did all that. I remember a lot of times too, I would get mad at my dad when I was a kid because it would be Christmas Eve, and I didn't know it at the time, but I wanted him to myself, right?
Sure.
But he would be at a meeting because he went, didn't matter what holiday, because the recovery was important to him. And it didn't matter what holiday it was, but coffee afterwards was so important, and so many people didn't have anywhere to go. My dad would invite them back to the house, and my mom would have a pot of coffee on for all of them. And when I was a child, I didn't necessarily understand that as much, but as an adult and somebody in recovery, I'm just so amazed at what that did for people. And then I would hear stories from those people about how important it was. Like they didn't have any family, they were feeling lonely, and that helped them get through that day. And so it's just sometimes it was really cool to hear how those little things
Right.
while I was growing up that I kind of resented, you know, being a little
Yeah.
spoiled brat a little bit sometimes.
Yeah.
I kind of resented it, and but I realized later on how really important it was to a lot of people. So, I mean, that was the essence of my childhood. As a senior in high school, I kind of started drinking and rebelling at 15. 17 years old, I was pregnant. I was pregnant my senior year of high school. I graduated May 24th, so 33 years ago today. And I had him May 27th. And so I was due May 20th. So I was 4 days overdue when I graduated high school, and then had him. Just spent a lot of my life just focusing on being a mom to him. And my parents were super helpful in all of that.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of going through that kind of stuff, raising him, having them help me raise him. Yeah, there's so much that I don't know how far I should really go.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so it sounds like your family was pretty supportive, and you
Yeah.
guys were pretty close. And you know, I just kind of think about how, you know, when you said you started drinking at like 15 or do you feel like your dad being in the program, did that, like, I mean, I feel like to an extent there's like, it's normal to be curious as a kid, but do you feel like the fact that he was in recovery, did that like play any part in your desire to drink, or was it very...
No, I'm not 100% certain.
Yeah.
It could have. I do know that I wanted to.
Sure.
And I'm just kind of one of them. If I want to, I'll do it. I'll make it happen. And
yeah.
so, you know, did I rebel? Yes. But I was still like this really good kid. I still
Sure.
got A's in high school. I still did all of that. You know, it was just something that even both my brothers kind of
Sure.
went into. My brother Jeff's been in recovery for many years.
Okay.
He went down a bad road young, and now he's kind of come back from it. I think I wouldn't say that because my dad's in recovery we went that direction. I would say because my dad's in recovery we knew that there was an alternative
Way
to
to get out of
staying
it.
in addiction.
Sure. Yeah.
That's how I would put it.
That makes sense. So typically, people will share kind of major life occurrences or like turning points in their life where you recognize that your drinking was a problem, or where you kind of crossed that threshold. Can you talk a little bit about...
Yeah. One thing before I actually started drinking, I used to self-harm, self-mutilate. And so when I was 15, before I really even had my first time drinking, I was in treatment for that.
Okay.
And parents, again, very supportive, wanted me to get help. I was pretty suicidal.
Sure.
Tried a couple times, and then remembered, like, really what stopped me was my grandma. One of her children, when I was young, I think I was 6, my uncle killed himself in her house. And I just didn't want to do that to my grandma again, because I know she died at 70 years old, still wondering what happened,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, I think I've always kind of had this depression type thing. It was just how was I dealing with it.
Yeah.
And so at first it was cutting, then it was drinking, then it was, I'm just going to put it out there, then it was sex.
Sure.
Then it was like all these different things. And then I
Yeah.
had my son at 17, and I just decided that I needed to start pulling my life together, and I can't do that because I have him that I have to take care of. So
Sure.
I was going to college. My parents were very helpful. I had my grandma and my aunt, everybody was so helpful in my family to just make sure he was taken care of so I could do this. My friend Tara watched him. It was a lot of support. And then as I got older, I would drink a little bit. But I could go for weeks and months without drinking. And I always, part of the reason I went back to the story about being 15, when I was in there, they said I was borderline alcoholic. So maybe it did happen after I drank, but they said I had 4 out of the 7 signs, so I was
Sure.
borderline. So I just made rules. Right? Because I'm a good rule follower. So I made rules. I would never drink on Sunday.
Sure.
I would never drink alone. I would, all of these rules that I had. It was then that I wound up, started drinking a little bit more. Then I met a guy who wound up becoming my husband, and my son's father, my second son's father, 10 years later. And it was, I felt like I just was always chasing happiness. I always thought if I did this next thing, I would be happy. If I had this next thing, I would be happy. And part of if I had a husband, I'd be happy, and then I wouldn't need to numb and drink
Sure.
in this stuff. So I got a husband. If I had another child, I would be happy. I had another child. And then I gained a lot of weight. And so I'm like, if I just lose weight, I'll be happy. I had gastric bypass, lost 145 pounds. I was 285. I lost more than half my body weight. Still wasn't happy. My husband and I wound up getting divorced. And it was then that I really spiraled. That's when I really started drinking a lot. It started being 7 days a week. It started really affecting my kids. My oldest was already out of the house. He was 18. And he just kind of said, Mom, I can't live here. I can't be around this. And so he moved in with his dad. So then, of course, I spiraled more because it really was, Noah and I grew up together, my oldest. And, it was just kind of one of those things that it just kept spiraling and spiraling and
Yeah.
spiraling. And then finally I remember one time I went to work and I went in I called, I'm like, hey, I woke up late. It was 10 o'clock. And I was sitting at my desk. I got in, I was sitting at my desk. The HR manager walked by and he was an old school guy, right? Just kind of not really cared what he said or thought.
Yeah.
He walks by me, he goes, oh, I'm glad you finally sobered up enough to come to work. And of course, instant, I was pissed.
Yeah.
How dare you say something like that? I just overslept, just did that addiction thing, right?
Yeah.
And, but that was probably one of the starting points. I was seeing a life coach because I knew I was always chasing happiness.
Sure.
And I just didn't want to chase happiness anymore. I had met him through another person that I knew through Noah's school, and life coach sessions with him, kind of going through what my core issues are, why am I always trying to chase happiness, kind of getting into that mindset that happiness isn't a destination.
Yep.
It really is a state of mind and a journey. And, I went from when I started seeing him to, he had me do a gratitude list. I think we've all heard, gratitude list. Make sure you write
Sure.
down the 3 things that you're grateful for. And I just didn't know what I was grateful for. And he's just like, even if you just have to say that you're grateful that you opened your eyes that day. And
Yeah.
but ultimately at the end of the day, I kept saying, well, if I just can control this with my drinking, if I can control that, if I can do this, I'll be better. And he just finally, he said, Penny, he goes, you're beyond controlling it anymore. Well, I've always been able to control it. I've always had the rules. And he's
Yeah.
like, but you're beyond those. And then I wound up breaking a moral code that I've always had one night. And I said I would never do that in my entire life. And because I find it so morally wrong. And I broke that code. And 2 days later, I was in treatment. And I was super grateful for the people. I worked at Frontier Ag and Turf at the time in New Richmond. I was the assistant accounting manager there. And the HR manager, who pissed me off not 3 months before that because he called me out, him, and then the general manager, who had been in recovery for like 25 years, came in. He called Linda Skoglund from JA Counter, and they had me in Hazelton the next day.
Wow.
They all worked behind the scenes while I'm in the HR manager's office just crying because I just didn't think I had any options. I thought my life was just done. And so it was pretty phenomenal.
Did you go to Center City?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah, so I spent 28 days inpatient, and then back then they had the outpatient program. It was an intensive 6-week outpatient program.
Sure.
So it was 4 days a week. I think it was 5 to 8 or 5 to 9 every night. Monday through Thursday, we'd have Friday, Saturday, Sunday off, but we were expected to attend meetings Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Thursdays was to bring a family member.
Okay.
So for 6 weeks, my dad would come with me. He'd skip his meeting. That was a really good part of his recovery and really important part at the Peace Lutheran Church in Dresser. He skipped those meetings for 6 weeks to come and support me. So that was pretty awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I was there this last time getting sober. Where I went to Hazelden, so it's a great experience for us. Me and my wife. It's like our honeymoon.
Yeah.
So that's great. What do you feel like has been helpful for you? I mean, since getting sober, like what does your recovery look like? Has it looked like in the past? Like,
meetings were always really important. I'm a really driven person,
Sure.
kind of that type A personality.
Yeah.
So, I know they just say one day at a time, just, take it one day at a time, which it is one day at a time.
Yeah.
I will fully say that. But being a goals person, I started setting goals for myself, and then just kept telling my brain, like, if you go back, you're being inefficient. So I know everybody said the first year in recovery is the hardest. That is the hardest to get through. You have all of these things that you're trying to fix from being active. Then now you have to figure out how to deal with all of these emotions.
right.
And you just want, especially some people are married, so now you're dealing with your marital issues,
Yep.
all while trying to do all of this other work. Us that went into recovery single, we're trying to navigate wanting to date and have somebody in our life, thinking that we just don't want to do this alone, and then just trying to figure out all this out and not be the same person that we were and deal with that. The only thing you have to change is everything, and it's a big pill to swallow.
Yep.
And so my first goal was just to get to a year, and then when I knew, I know things can change at any moment, but I knew my drive, and I had confidence that I was going to make it to a year. I changed my goal. I started looking at people that were 5 years sober, and I'm like, I'd see people get their 5-year medallion, and they talk about their happiness.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I want that. Okay, so I got to make it to 5 years. And in that journey, I'll find the happiness somewhere. And I knew if I went back, I'd be starting over. I'd have to do it. It's so inefficient.
Sure.
And again, that's how my brain works. And then when I was inching in on that 5 years, I knew I needed another goal, and I started looking at people with 10 years, and I'm like, wow, they have peace. It's not about happiness anymore, it's just about peace.
Yeah.
And so not only was I just trying to make that the recovery period, getting to 10 years, my goal was just to try and find that peace. And So that's really how I've ran my recovery.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's worked for me. Again, being a goal-oriented, driven person, it, you know, I need goals. Otherwise, I will slip back.
So I think maybe this is a good segue. You can kind of talk about your company and
Yeah.
how you got into that, and then also, if you don't mind sharing that story that you talked about with your dad telling you to,
Oh, yeah.
you maybe sneak that in there too.
Yeah, I would love
Okay.
to. So I was, when I was working at Frontier, I was being slated to be the accounting manager, and that's what they were training me for. They were wonderful with me through my recovery. I had to leave early days to
Sure.
go to the outpatient treatment. Like, they were so amazing through my recovery process, right? And they're for me every step of the way. And I knew, like, I was going to retire from there. Then I had mentioned that I had gastric bypass back in 2008. And so it was probably 2011, I got sober. So it was like 2013 that I started having blood sugar issues from, it's a rare side effect from the gastric bypass.
Oh, sure.
And it's called reactive hypoglycemia. So I started doctoring at Mayo. I started with my doctor. He wasn't able to figure out. He gave me a referral to Mayo. So I started doctoring down there. It started affecting my work. It started affecting my attitude and how I worked with other people. And very grateful for my supervisor at the time. Her name is Beth Collada. Huge person in my past that had a really great impact on me, not only as a person but in recovery and as an accounting professional. She just was like, Penny, we need to figure out something because we can't continue to have you're affecting everybody. Sure. So I went on a leave. They gave me FMLA for 12 weeks. I was on short-term disability. Very much in contact with them coming back. But at the end of the day, it took so long. It took the 12 weeks, and my position was just so important that they couldn't keep it open anymore.
Sure.
So after the 12-week FMLA, they had to let me go. I have no resentments towards it.
Yeah.
I totally understood. They said that once I'm all better and if they have an opening, they would definitely bring me back. You know, it was just kind of that thing.
Sure. Left on decent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my son, while I was working there, was a combine and planter technician at the Osceola Frontier. And so nothing affected him. It was very, no bridges were burned,
Sure.
right? It was very understandable. So I decided at that time, like, if I'm going to have to go look for a job, I remember what it was like. I have all this experience in accounting and I'm really good at it, and I can problem solve a lot of stuff, and I can work things back, find where the problem was, and I can build the process so that there's checks and balances. Like, that's where I excel. And but I didn't have the degree. I kept trying to go back for it throughout the years. And so I just decided 2014 when they let me go, I was gonna enroll in college and work part-time. And I had met the previous owners of Krumm Exteriors through recovery, through a couple motorcycle rides. And so we all used to ride motorcycle together. I'd bought one. I started riding, I don't know, probably a year after my blood sugar issues were kind of settled. I could barely drive a car.
Yeah.
Let alone I literally, the blood sugar issues were so bad for about a year I couldn't even drive a car more than a half hour away from home. Otherwise I was a danger on the road because my blood sugar would go so bad that I would just, like, it was bad. Anyway, so I met them through that. And then he knew that I worked at Frontier, and he had asked about me because he'd come in there and get stuff for his skid steers and stuff like that. And he called me up one day and just said, hey, I want to grow the business. This was July of 2015. And he goes, hey, I want to grow the business. I know I need somebody to come in and help, and just wondering if you'd be willing to come in and help. And I said, I'm really focusing on school.
Yeah.
I'm not graduating till May of 2016. Can I do it part-time? And will you work with my school schedule? And that's where it started.
Wow.
Yeah, I think I had first met him I was watching some friends from the New Richmond Alano Club play in a recovery softball league in I think it's St. Paul,
Okay.
maybe Maplewood. But I was there watching a few friends, and his son was in that one.
Okay.
So he was there watching them, and we had that's the first time we had met, and then we had met through other recovery people, and then again, like I said, riding motorcycles. So it was just so crazy how it all started. And then I just spent a lot of years working for them, and we grew the business. We did. And then they just decided that they both decided that they wanted to retire. And so December of 2020, after COVID, like in the midst of COVID, they said, hey, what do you think about buying the business? And, and I had already been working with them with other people to sell it to them. Like I'd been getting their paperwork because, again, I efficiencies, accounting, that's all kind of my bread and butter, right? And how do we save money here to be able to, like inefficiencies? How do we make things more efficient? How do we make it so, like if somebody has a problem over here, there's probably a step we can make 5 steps before that will make it not happen there. And so that was kind of mine.
Was that surprising to you? Or
it was super surprising.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, quite honestly, part of the story is that I knew that they were going to retire and that they were going to sell. And I actually I'd always had this vision of wanting to do real estate, and just kind of always had people telling me, well, you need to make money. How are you going to support your family? You don't make anything until you sell something, and it costs you money to get in. How are you going to do all this? And so I just never did it. And so I was actually getting my real estate license at the time.
So you were preparing for kind of a chapter to end in your life.
I was, yes.
And move on to something else. And so here, out of left field, comes this opportunity.
Yep.
And you jumped on it.
No.
Oh, okay.
No, as I said before, I'm just kind of that driver.
Sure.
And I'm just like, okay, well, how do we make it happen?
Yeah.
And this was probably one of the first times in my life that I just said, I don't know if this is right.
Sure.
I'm going to let God take the wheel on this.
Wow.
And I just said, okay, I like, what are the steps to entry? And if the first step is a yes, then I'm going to go to the next step.
Yeah.
And if God opens that door and says, go to the next step, I'm going to go to the next step.
Wow.
And so I did jump on it in the fact that I'm just like, okay, this is an opportunity. God gave it.
Yep.
It's Mike and Cheryl Krumm gave it. And I also believe that God had a big hand in that. And, he writes our stories.
Yeah.
Had I not been sick, I would have never even thought about being with Mike and, being at Krumm Exteriors. So, so it was months of God saying yes. And then struggles, right? Dealing with, you have people that, they put 25 years into this business.
Yeah.
And struggled. They were there when, in 2008 when the market crashed, like they had to worry about feeding their family. Like they were trying to sell me a business that they had built from the ground up. And there's emotion and value behind that.
Yeah.
Right. And so it was, I'm trying, as I'm trying to navigate that and be appreciative of that, I'm also trying to be that driver, get things done. And so, it was a good opportunity to really kind of get past let's figure out what it takes to get it done, and really kind of get into, there's emotions behind this
Sure.
stuff.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I try not to be super emotional. I mean, if I feel a feeling coming on, then it's instant anger. You know, like if I feel sadness or upset or, you know, hurt, it's like, okay, then I just result to anger. So I was just trying to navigate that.
Yeah.
But yeah, then it worked out. October 1st of 2021, signed the papers. And, you know, then in May of 2022, a huge storm hit in Hudson. Well, it actually, in 2 weeks, we had a major storm hit the north end of our service area and the south end.
Hailstorm.
Hailstorms.
Yep, I remember that. I got hit twice
Yes.
by that hailstorm.
Yes. Yeah, because then that same year in River Falls, then
Yep.
it
was
got
in
hit.
Hudson and River Falls.
Hudson and River
Yeah,
Falls.
I remember
Yeah.
that. What a nightmare.
It was. And so we did a lot. We grew the business a lot.
Yeah, I was gonna say, probably good for you.
It
Not
was.
good for my
it was.
car, but-
Yeah, it wasn't good for cars. It wasn't. I mean, I think people that got new roofs and siding, it was really good for
Yeah.
them too.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's. So we just the business just blew up.
Yeah.
It
yeah.
blew up, and you know, in running a business, there's always stuff, right? You know, I think, and so kind of I had a struggle. I just recently had this week's been a struggle, quite honestly, and some major things have been happening, and I called my dad because it's kind of one of those things that I was kind of lost in the emotion of it, and so I called my dad, and I'm just like, Dad, what do I do? And he goes, when was the last time you went to a meeting? He goes, I know every time I'm struggling, if I go to a meeting, I usually feel pretty good afterwards. And I'm like, goes, they may not solve my problem, but I can kind of reset.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah. You're right, Dad. Isn't that what they're for?
Yep. Well, and I was telling you earlier how that's always, for me, that's always like the last place my mind goes.
Yeah.
Is like, oh, maybe I should go to a meeting. It's like, no, I'm sitting here and all this stuff's happening. I'm miserable, and that's,
Yeah.
even though that's always what has worked for me, right? That's like,
It's the simple answer. But I'm sitting here with all these puzzle pieces kind of, you know, this is kind of how I've done accounting and process development. I just kind of, it's kind of funny. People are used to it with me by now. Sometimes they'll just see me staring at a wall. And I'm not just staring at a wall. I've got, you know, like my mind's got this whole big project going on, and I have this piece, and I have this puzzle piece, and I have this one and that one, and I've got, okay, and then I'm trying to fit them all together and make this square, and none of them are, you know, so then they're not fitting. So then I take all the, you know, like that's just how my brain works. And so that's my default.
Yeah.
And then my dad says, when's the last time you went to a meeting?
do you think that having kind of that like mentality where you're very, you know, I'm trying to think of the right word.
Problem solver?
Problem solver. Do you feel like that ever has made it challenging in recovery, because so much of it is like give it to God and all these like abstract things that you don't really have, you know what I'm saying? Like
Yep.
okay.
Because it's my default, right? And I love problem solving, and I'm good at it, right? And you know, so oftentimes we talk about what we're not good at.
Yeah.
And this is just, I'm good at it. And it's taken me a long time to be able to say that, but I am. And so it's my default, right? So this is how much, but then I have to remember there's balance.
Sure.
That not every problem is there to be solved.
Yeah.
But kind of one of the things that kind of brought me back to that, not every problem's to be solved. We had a meeting at our warehouse with our field guys on Tuesday, and the coffee was out, and they were making new coffee with the coffee pot at the warehouse, and it was so slow. And one of the guys was just joking, like, "Oh, do better, Marty," you know, to our warehouse guy, and it was a joke. And I'm like, "Well, what's going on?" "Well, the coffee pot's slow." Oh, do you want me to bring in vinegar? No, I do it about every 2 weeks. Okay. Well, do you want a Keurig? Then you have this problem. And I'm like, or, like, we can always get a bun out here,
Yeah.
And finally, the one that made the joke, he's just like, it's not a big deal. It only happens like once every 6 months when we're all in a meeting like this for an hour. Like, it's not, we don't need you to solve this, Penny. And it was like, oh yeah, not every problem's to be solved. But yeah, it is hard. And so I just kind of have to go back to, it just so happened that night, my oldest son called me. He'll be 33 on Tuesday, and he's very faithful, and he's just like, Mom, he goes, I'll just pray for discernment for you, and maybe that you can pray for that too. And I go back to a lot of things, especially when I feel like I instantly go to, I'm failing. And I'm not a failure. I don't want to fail. Like, I hate failing.
Yeah.
Again, goal-oriented
Yep.
driver, type A. I remember it struck me so much. I was at, I had a networking meeting that I was part of for a long time at Osceola Community Church. And in the women's bathroom, when you walk out on the door, it said Psalms 46:5, God is within her, she will not fail. And it just struck me, and it just stuck with me so much. One time when my boys and I were on vacation, we kind of had this thing about 2 years in a row, we all got tattoos. And so I have an angel tattooed on my right shoulder with a cross, and it Psalms 46:5, God is within her, she will not fail. So every time I start feeling like I'm a failure, I just kind of hold my arm. And I'm just like, no, God's got this more than I do. And it just, he's got it. And I just kind of need to, so then I started remembering some of the things that I've heard over the years, sometimes when we feel it's falling apart, it's actually falling together, coming together. And then I go back to when I was at Frontier. I go back to when I was at Frontier and I lost that job. I thought my life was falling apart.
Yeah.
And and it really was, like, had that not happened, I wouldn't be where I'm at today.
Right,
And
right.
so it was really coming together. And then the other thing, an arrow can't traject forward without being pulled back. And so maybe this is just us being pulled back so we can really traject forward and really have this time to really focus our aim.
Yeah.
And so those kind of things, like just somebody just calling me, like my son, or talking to my dad, I'm in this spiral, and then they just both kind of just simple words just bring me out of
Pull you
it
out
to
of
what
it.
I know and what I've learned and what I've grown, because I'm instantly falling back to that spiral of, we're used to that spiral in addiction. We're used to all of that. For most of us, that was probably our life growing up, was that constant chaos and that constant spiral. And it brought me out.
That's why that connection is so important, right?
Yes.
With other people. Because if you're anything like me, and probably a lot of people that are listening to this, it's real easy to get into that echo chamber in our head and, convince ourselves that we're not good at
Yes.
certain things, or, and so I can relate to so much of what you said, just about, not feeling like you're good enough. And so.
Yeah, that imposter syndrome. Oh my gosh, that comes in so much. And then, just recently I was asked to do, we belong to a business development group. And I was asked to go up on stage and talk about, like, how we've kind of grown our business and what we've done, how we hire salespeople and what our expectations and kind of all of that. And, I spent so much time thinking I was being humble that I just was not confident. And I just felt like, why would they ask me? What do I
Right.
have to give people? And then afterwards, people are like, oh my gosh, Penny, it was so good. You were so confident. And I'm like, well, I thought it sucked.
I didn't feel it.
I thought it sucked, like, and
Yeah.
so now but in times like that, and when I start feeling that, it came to my brain not long ago, and I remember there's that line, and I don't know all the scriptures. It's not something that I remember, but I remember that somebody had told me, especially like with the disciples, they weren't qualified to be disciples. He qualified them. So God doesn't choose the qualified, he qualifies the chosen.
Sure.
And I feel like everything that has kind of taken place in my life, whether I had extreme faith or not, it led me to this, and I'm being qualified to do this. Like, whether I believe it or not,
Sure.
and our success, even if we have to kind of step back a little bit and move forward, like, it doesn't mean, it just, yeah, like, we've got this. We've got this. We have an excellent team, and just kind of same thing with life. But I'm so hyper independent that when things start getting tough, I just go into that mode. Like, I don't have support. I need to take care of this. I can't bring other people into my feelings. I need to be strong for everybody else. I need to be the one that guides this. And so there's just so much of that I think that sometimes I wonder if we'll ever get out of it, but it's also grateful for, people. A lot of times people ask, do you wish maybe you weren't an alcoholic, or do you wish maybe all this blood sugar, you wouldn't have had the gastric bypass, so the blood sugar stuff wouldn't have happened? And I'm like, all I know is everything has led me to where I'm at today, and had any of that not happened, it would be a completely different story.
Yeah.
And so no, I'm not upset that I'm an alcoholic in recovery. I'm grateful for it. So here's the really cool part, Kyle.
Yeah.
It's so exciting to see. We have had people that have worked for us that have gotten sober while they work for us.
Wow.
And are still sober. And their lives have changed because of it. I've seen people recover from, like, we just had our production manager just recently. He was over in Afghanistan, kind of some PTSD. We were asked to help with the Freedom Park Center, VFW in Richmond there.
Yeah. Yep.
So we did the siding and the stone and stuff on that, and we were able to donate all our profits back.
Yeah.
And so just him working on that, he realized, yep, I'm going to sign up for the VFW. It healed a part of himself, and he's become very active in it, and he was able to go for a walk with the governor.
Wow.
To help raise money for the Freedom Park Center. Like, this is what we do.
Yeah.
And and so no matter how kind of tough things get at running a business, that's the stuff that it's like, this is why we do what we do, and this is why, just to have a little bit of an impact.
Yeah. Well, and you guys do a lot for
We do.
the community. You guys give back quite a bit. I know a previous guest, Julie from Onyx, I think she said that she was like the recipient of some sort of, so you guys you're doing a lot in the community. And I think, having that background like we do, we have that passion to help people that, I don't know, I feel like we have that unique, like, perspective on humanity, I guess.
Yeah.
And just, so I think that that's amazing. And, I'm kind of just reflecting on everything that you've said, and it's, yeah, you have a pretty inspiring, you know, story, and just how you've been able to kind of overcome things and run a company, a really successful company, you know, and so I want to kind of give you, well, this next question is twofold, but first of all, what would you say to someone who might be struggling or experiencing some of the things that you've experienced? And then I'll kind of give you the last opportunity for your closing thoughts.
Okay. I think anybody that's struggling, it's worth it. Like, it's not easy. It's definitely not easy. It's not easy to start. It's not easy. But that's kind of the whole point, is that we can do hard things. And we can do hard things without drugs or alcohol. We can do it. And there is support. Like, we don't have to do it alone. That's the other thing. And I think we get so far into the shame and guilt of what we've done. Like, even now, I still kind of go back to what I put my youngest son through as in his pivotal years. And while I was really active in my drinking, and sometimes I start to feel shame of that, but at the same time, like, it's not a shameful thing. Like, none of it's shameful. We have our lives. We all make mistakes. We all do things. We all deserve and forgiveness, and and it's not always from other people. We deserve to forgive ourselves.
Yeah. Sometimes that's the hardest part.
It is. It really is, because, like, especially, you know, I'm very good at cheerleading for other people. When it comes to myself, instant, and I'm very good at being patient with other people, but myself, I'm not, you know. And so just, there are resources, and I just find it so cool, like what you're doing, and a lot of other people out there, like, to really diminish the stigma. And there are so many resources, not enough. There's definitely not enough. But people that are really working hard to develop the resources, working hard to make sure that it's a known problem.
Yeah.
You know, advocating for people in recovery. I'm super excited about being able to kind of be on the ground floor. I've been on the board of directors for Osceola Medical Center for a few years, and for about the last, I think I don't know if it's been about 6 months now that I've been the chair of the board, and just what I've been able to see them do, like the work that they're doing to help with mental illness and recovery efforts, it's pretty amazing. And so come into the program, do the work, get a sponsor, listen to them.
Yeah.
Even when you think that they have absolutely no idea what they're talking about and you want to do something completely different, don't do what they tell you.
Right. Right.
They do know, you know, and just get through. Just get through that first year, and you're going to see your whole life change. But that first year's tough.
It is. It's good stuff.
Go to meetings, give back,
Yeah.
start working the work, just really work it. That should be your only priority, or your biggest priority. You have to make money, you have to take care of your kids,
Sure,
whatnot. But
sure.
that you can't do all of that. It's kind of like putting your, what do they say? Put your mask on and in the plane before you put everybody else's mask
oxygen,
on.
yeah,
The
yep.
Oxygen mask,
Yep.
yeah. So, yeah, just take care of yourself and make sure that you're making recovery a priority. And if you have to make the goal to just get to a year and then make another goal and make another goal, if that's how your brain works, do it. Don't
Yeah.
do what works. Just, yeah.
Well, it's all really good stuff, and Penny, I just want to thank you for meeting with me, and yeah, I'm really excited to share this. I hope you feel, this is great.
Yeah, I love, at one point somebody, people ask you, well, what do you think your purpose in life is? And I just never really knew.
Yeah.
And then somebody said to me, because I wanted to be something profound, right? What's your purpose? Oh, I'm going to be a doctor and I'm going to heal people, or I'm going to be a medic and I'm going to go do this. Like, to me, that's profound. And so I always thought it had to be profound. And I knew I wasn't good with blood. I'm okay with blood, but, I'm just like, it didn't really fit my passion. Well, then somebody told me one time, I think I was listening to a speech at one of the conferences that I went to, and they said, well, think about when you're trying to figure out your passion, think about what you want somebody to say about you at your funeral. I know it seems a little bit morbid, but at the end of the day, I just want somebody to say that them meeting me, whether it was for a brief moment or a lifetime, that I made an impact.
Yeah.
That I somehow was kind to them, that I was kind to them, and that I made a difference. And whether it's a quick smile or opening a door, I just look at it, that was one thing somebody said to me really early in recovery, that you don't always know how you help people.
Right.
It could just be opening the door and smiling at them can change their day.
Yeah.
And so to me, that's just this. I hope that at some point, I hope it resonates with somebody. And if it doesn't, that's okay too. I think that we all have amazing stories,
Yep.
and yeah, I have overcome a lot. I still have more to overcome. I still have a lot of work to do.
Goes back to that journey.
It does go
right?
back to
It's
the journey.
It's not the destination.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it comes with age. I turned 50 last year. My brain still thinks I'm in my 20s, and and I can do everything. And then things happen, like you trip over a telephone cord and break both your elbows. You hit your head on, just all that stuff. So anyway, for my my 50th birthday, that week was pretty astounding. I had my birthday, turned 50, jumped out of a plane on Thursday, signed on to purchase my first rental property on Friday. So it was like a big week, but it was also like very exhilarating and very it was pretty freeing. I don't know, something happened. It was like I started just to realize that life is not for me to live for other people.
Yeah.
It's for me to live to help other people. And I don't know. It's hard to explain. But then, then your knee starts creaking when you walk up the stairs, and you realize after 6 months you think it's 6 months of thinking it's the stairs. You find out it's actually your knee because it happened at another staircase. Stuff like that. But I still think that I still think my brain a lot of times I'm 25, and I'm okay with that.